Hello, welcome to Max Gregory's project plan for the game Rumble Tumble made by the studio The Doghouse. This project plan is made via Jira and it's made in the free version. All tasks are put through the backlog since this is kind of an individual project plan, and it was just best for me to create it via the backlog. The whole thing is separated into 15 sprints for a total of 30 weeks. Each sprint has divided between 250 to 280 or just over. This is because we have available to us 310 hours per sprint, and that gives us then at least 30 hours leeway. Each sprint here has a sprint goal. So you see in the first one here, in this first sprint, the main focus will be to lay down a lot of the groundwork, get all the concepts done, character and levels, get very basic movement and combat in with first draft animations, and write the first draft of the game's design document. With all these important decisions done, we will be able to easily move on to the next sprint. Each sprint has its own sprint goal there, and this is kind of just where I sum up what I wanted to be able to achieve by the end of this sprint. Within each sprint, there are very general tasks. Each task, as we can see here, has a task description. For example, this create very basic player controller task has a description of set up the base for the player controller so that players can walk around and also hit each other. Also set up the base for the animator controller so that we can implement the animations as soon as they are done. Over here to the right, we have labels. This is whoever is going to be working on it. So Matt, the program, is going to be working on this, and this is the programming department. We also have the story point estimate, which I'm using as a guide of how long this task should approximately take. So for sprint 1, we have create very basic player controller, we have set up basic testing scene, create basic combat mechanics, create basic combat animations, create basic movement animations, create Greybox 3D character model, create 2D character concepts, write first draft of the GDD, create farm level asset list, plan base farm level design, create high priority farm level assets, hold weekly play testing sessions, create basic ragdoll player mechanics, create playable 4-player, set up player sprint, create modular assets and set up team social medias, and finally create general weapon. Now, in every single one of these sprints is divided into tasks, as I said previously. In this video, I will not be reading off every single task, nor will I be reading the description for every single task. If you would like access to this board, please feel free to email me at maxgregory321@gmail.com so I can grant you access to it, and please feel free to go in and look at any of the work that has been done. What I will talk about in this episode, however, is the general sprint goals for each and every sprint. Rumble Tumble is a 4-player couch co-op fighter/brawler game set in a medieval fantasy world where players will be able to choose from 4 characters to fight to the death with. There are a total of 2 levels and also an interactive lobby where players can decide their characters and maps and game modes. There are 2 game modes, free-for-all and team mode, and players can fight each other to the death, unarmed or single-handed combat. In this video, I will not be listing off every single one of the tasks, as I said previously, nor will I be reading off the descriptions for each task, but I will be talking about what each sprint generally wants to accomplish. I already said that in sprint 1, the general goal was to basically lay down all the foundations for it, because I believe once we've got all the foundations for the game, just the bare bones basics, we can then expand upon them onto later sprints. So in sprint 1, it's just creating the very basics for them. In sprint 2, it's starting to build upon that foundation. We start adding details, we start adding layers. For sprint 2, one of the big things was we started to want to get first pass of all the character models. We wanted to improve that combat and movement a bit with some more polished animations, and we wanted to have a better block out of the farm level. In sprint 3, we are going to be focusing solely on movement, since it was in the end of sprint 2 that we discovered a plugin called Puppet Master. And Puppet Master will help a lot with exaggerated ragdoll physics, something which is one of our key selling points for this game. So I sat down at the end of Sprint 2 when our programmer Matt discovered this plugin, and I decided that it would be very beneficial for us to have in the long run. It would make things a lot easier and a lot faster in the long run. But the downside to it was that Matt would have to take time off from general development to go in and research and experiment and implement all of the Puppet Master. That was absolutely fine because I had to readjusted the plan to make this work. So Sprint 2, we already had a lot of the foundations for it. So we had the characters getting ready, and we also had the farm level getting ready, meaning that in Sprint 3, Matt could take time off from general development, and then the animator can improve the movement animations, we can improve the farm animations as well, and also the character models. Move on to Sprint 4 now, and the plan is that we'll have Puppet Master more or less understood now. There is a lot of leeway within these with Sprint 3, 4, 5 and 6, since that there's bound to be a few issues with Puppet Master and the implementation of it. But we should have it more or less completely figured out by this point. Move on to Sprint 4 now, and the focus is combat. Last sprint, Sprint 3, was movement, Sprint 4 is combat. Since this is a fighting game, it's really important that we get combat completely nailed down as well as movement, and we get a good fluidity between the two. A way that I have planned to do this is that we're going to implement a lot of more quick combat mechanics, so a lot of jumping, quick throw of your weapons, things like that. In this Sprint 4, we're also planning on starting the process of creating the final 3D models of the characters. Now, creating the final models of characters is going to take longer than creating the first pass and mid-level characters, so it will be a total of 2 characters per sprint. Sprint 4 will be the elf and knight, Sprint 5 will be the orc and dwarf. It is also in Sprint 4 that we will start concepting for the Levolution, also known as dynamic level events, within the farm level. Now on to Sprint 5. Sprint 4, we would have finished the farm level, so now it is time to move on to the interactive lobby scene. From the get-go, the team decided that they wanted to have as little UI as possible, and therefore for this menu/lobby, they wanted it to be diegetic, and they wanted players to be able to walk around, learn the game from there, then jump into a match. Therefore, once they've already jumped into a match, they know how to play the game. Also said in Sprint 4 that our character artists at this point would be working on the dwarf and orc models. Those are the final models for the characters. The other 2 things that are going to be mainly worked on this sprint is, 1, there's going to be a new team deathmatch game mode. Up to this point, we've only had a type of free-for-all game mode, and at this point we will have a new team game mode. And also we will upgrade the farm Levolution. We're going to do this through particles and assets for the farm Levolution. Sprint 6 now, and Sprint 6 is the last sprint before demo day. While I was creating my project plan, demo day was a very key milestone. It is roughly around halfway through the development process, and I believe that we have to have what I call the 2 keys present for demo day. 2 keys are the key features and key selling points. Key features are things that the game cannot be considered a game without, so like the movement, combat, characters, location. And the key selling points are what will make our game special. So the klutzy ragdoll physics, dynamic level events, and the cartoon violence. So for Sprint 6, we have to be able to present all of the 2 keys in the build. So there's going to be a lot of tidying up and polishing in Sprint 6. We want to have all the basic movement and combat animations in, but we also want to be able to test the fluidity between the movement and combat, and therefore tweak it if we have to. In this sprint, there's going to be a lot of playtesting. Normally, I dedicate at least 8 hours a sprint for playtesting, but since this is the last sprint before that big demo day, there's 16 hours, literally doubled in the amount of hours that we are going to spend playtesting. We need to make sure that it has as little bugs and as little things are broken as possible. Sprint 7 now, and Sprint 7 will be the first sprint after the Christmas break and after demo day. People might be a bit hazy of remembering at what state the game was at, so we'll have some general play testing, quite a lot of play testing, 22 hours in specifically, just dedicated to play testing and seeing at what state the game is at. It will also be the last major sprint in which we can create some major changes to the movement and combat and levolution and farm level. In this sprint as well, we shall also create personalized character weapon models. So these are weapons that are just for one character in particular, and we'll also create crowd models. We'll go into more detail about what these are for in a later sprint. Sprint 7 also is the start of personalized character animations. Each character, so the elf, knight, dwarf and orc, will have personalized character animations, and each character will be worked on each sprint. So sprint 7 is the knight. In sprint 8, and this is the sprint where we go absolutely full beam because we will have less personal assignments and we don't have any big deadlines ahead of us. So what we're going to do in this sprint is concept the pirate ship level, concept some other game modes for the pirate ship, grey box that pirate ship, create the assets for this level, and we're also going to concept the levolution that will happen within this level. This will also be the sprint in which we start to add VFX to the game. I said previously that in each sprint we are going to be working on personalized character animations. Sprint 7 was the knight and sprint 8 is the orc. Sprint 9 now, and this is still quite heavily focused on the pirate ship level and the levolution within it, and also the game modes within the pirate ship level. At this stage we want to have less grey boxing and more actual assets within the level that have all been made in the previous sprint. Get them in and play test them, see how they feel, and then adjust and reiterate them to the feedback. In the sprint, we're also going to want to experiment with a few different game modes. Because the pirate ship is very different to the farm level is on solid ground, the pirate ship is in the water, there's going to be a lot of ideas and ways we could go about different game modes. So we're going to experiment with those, and we're also going to experiment with different levolution ideas. In the sprint as well, we will also create a character selection system so players can decide which character they want to play with. In sprint 10, we will be focusing on the dwarf personalized animation, since sprint 9 was the elf, sprint 8 was the orc, and sprint 7 was the knight. Sprint 10 will mark the last sprint that will have character personalization animation in them. Since we created a character selection system in sprint 9, in sprint 10 we'll be focusing as well on creating new character skins. Now these skins won't be completely different, but they will have the key colours changed on them. So therefore 4 players could play it as all the same character, but they'd each be able to keep track of which character is theirs. In the sprint, we'll also be creating the final pirate ship assets, implementing them into the game, and play testing the pirate ship a lot. We're also going to be focusing on polishing those movement and combat animations in engine, trying to get them as good as possible. In sprint 11, all development starts to come to a close. We've only got sprint 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15 left now until the final hand-in date. So all of sprint 11 is focused on play testing. We want to focus on very specific areas in play testing. We want to have an area where we focus on combat, another one on movement, another one on the taunt system, etc. In sprint 11, we will adjust and reiterate the movement and combat. And then if we go over to sprint 12, we will focus on every single thing else. We'll also have a team meeting about the changes and improvements that have to be made. We also create some new character skins which will be slightly different, not just color variations, and we'll create new weapon skins so that it can seem like there's multiple weapons within the level, but they're actually just the same weapon reskinned. The other thing that will be new in this one is that we are going to create, rig and animate some farm animals so that the farm level seems a bit more filled out. Sprint 13 represents the end of development. We only have sprint 13, 14 and 15 left. So all these sprints, little to nothing new will be implemented unless it's considered absolutely essential. All of these sprints are going to be heavily play tested. In previous sprints, it's been 8 to 16 hours of play testing per sprint. In sprint 13 and 14 is 40 hours, and in sprint 15 it is 60 hours of playtesting. The one thing that will be done differently in sprint 13 will be holding a tournament for the game outside of the team. Doing this should get people's attention to the game and we'll be able to witness and get some good, valuable feedback. Sprint 14 now, and just like Sprint 13, 40 hours solely dedicated to playtesting. It's going to be a lot of polishing, animations, movement, combat, evolution, game modes, and levels. In this sprint as well, we want to create a beta, and we want to play test that beta a lot. Find any possible bugs that are in it. So then when we move on to Sprint 15, we already know any possible bugs. The final sprint now, Sprint 15, and as I said previously, is 60 hours solely dedicated to playtesting. All this sprint is playtesting and polishing and making that final build and testing that final build. For this project plan, I have also created a roadmap using Jira as well. This has just helped me visualize when certain aspects of the game are going to be done. They are all separated into their different sections. So we have movement here for purple, we have combat, blue, we have farm, green, we have pirate ship, like blue. You get the idea. I had to reuse some of the colors because Jira only has a limited amount of colors. But doing this really just helped me visualize the whole form of the project. It goes from September to June. So it's quite a small project development time. So time is going to be quite tight, but we do have that at least 30 hours a week leeway. And that is my project plan. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you have any questions or if you'd like to go through this project plan yourself, please feel free to contact me and I'm sure we can set it up. Thank you very much.